The 1960s. They were a decade of turmoil and change, a time when the barbaric and the idealistic collided. A bright, energetic, youthful congressman from Massachusetts named John Fitzgerald Kennedy became the youngest man elected to the White House and challenged the American people to ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood in the shadow of Abraham Lincoln and proclaimed that I have a dream. Not before too long, though, both of these voices of promise, ambition, and new ideas of freedom would be silenced. The space race that began with the cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin ended when Neil Armstrong stepped off the short ladder and became the first human to set foot on the moon. All of these events and more played out on our television screens where for the first time we were able to see history happening as it occurred right before our eyes. The Beatles made their debut in America on Ed Sullivan in 1964, and the British invasion began. The Sound of Music leapt onto the motion picture screens that same year and became the most successful movie musical of all times.
I want to say this to the television.
President Johnson announced he would not seek another full term in office, and Republican Richard M. Nixon won the White House. He would not survive the political upheaval to come. As the decade of the 60s progressed, Bethel Baptist Church was constituted as a church. Reverend Kenneth Smith, who had been the superintendent of the chapel work, served as the church pastor in those first days. Smith, who was finishing seminary, resigned in 1962, feeling that his school work prevented him from being in the field as he should be, and he urged the church to find a full-time pastor. The church was pastorless from November 1962 until June 1963, when a man from Vicksburg, Mississippi, was called as pastor. Reverend Jim Willey had been asked to fill the pulpit on one Sunday during the period of time the church was without a pastor. Being impressed with Willey's skills and qualifications, the church extended to him a call in June of 1963. The upward growth that began in the days of the chapel continued under Reverend Willey's guiding hand. Sunday school and worship attendance swelled, and the ministries of the church grew proportionately. The Women's Mission Organization, as well as the Training Union, were well underway, as was the church music program, under the leadership of Miss Dorothy Warren. A new building was built to accommodate the growth at that time. The sanctuary would seat 300, and an education space was also constructed to accommodate the growing numbers during this time. The building was dedicated on December 13th of 1964. Reverend Willey resigned in 1967, and the church was served by 3 different interim pastors during that time. In 1969, Reverend Donald Strother was called to serve as pastor. He would remain until 1971. When Strother left Bethel to begin serving in Tennessee, he left them with these words: "When I retire from pastoring, I may come back here, get in some evangelistic church, and help some good pastoral witness to these needy masses. Such is my burden for this field even as I leave." After hearing that, some things never change. In the Gospel of Matthew, it says just this: "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out his laborers into his harvest." Matthew 9:37-38.